Hi, everybody. Welcome back to RVAsec 2024, or RVAsec 13, as the insiders say. It's at the Marriott Richmond, June 4th to the 5th this year. Our next guest, Mr. Micah Parks, MicahParks.com. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, you're giving a lecture at RVAsec. They have such good lecturers there, really good topics. I love your title, Reverse Engineering for Dummies, the quote, what if user. Explain that title to me. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so it's basically just going to be three small reverse engineering projects that I've done over the years. And they're all going to be like live, like I did these things in real life. I was the what if user in this case, and they're all just like three low stakes projects about how I reverse engineered, an Android game and a waitlist system and a publish subscribe system. And we can talk more about that in a minute. Yeah.
Now, what is the audience going to take away from this? This isn't Hacker Halted. It's not DEF CON or Black Hat, right? But if you can reverse engineer something, there's a learning component there, of course, and it teaches you about vulnerabilities, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, most certainly. So the main purposes of this talk are basically to generate interest in reverse engineering, because most of the reverse engineering in these talks are not like something super fancy. It's mostly like projects I did, and like one of them was less than 30 minutes, and the others were like weekend projects. And then what else I want to get out of, like others to get out of it, is the ability to identify some common software flaws that I notice a lot in the wild, and just some practical advice for how to fix them.
Now, I taught myself all this stuff. I got my first computer in 1984. It was 2 floppy drives. It cost me $1,250, and I had to finance it because I only made $1,250 as a policeman. That's how far back I go. And then hard drives came out, 25 megabytes, my friend. Ooh, a hard drive. Wow, that was a lot. 25 discs, right? That was a big deal. So I've learned this a different way. And as we talked for the show, I grew up in physical security, and I taught myself cybersecurity. And you know what? As I get older, I understand they're both the same thing. There's the same players, the same issues, the same mistakes, the same triumphs and challenges. Are you finding that, and you're a young man, and I'm assuming you had a computer in your hand when you were born because of your generation, are you finding that people of your age get this stuff better? My guess sometimes is people like me that knew DOS look at it, get it differently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm not too young. I've actually got my first computer, I think, close to junior high school. So was that 13 or 12? But yeah, so I think the security part of this is like people, it's a little more universal, the things that I'm talking about. It's not like how well do you understand computers? It's more about how much effort did the business put into this particular product? If that's
Right.
a good way to say it. Like,
Yeah.
if the business hasn't put enough effort into this product, then if you know a few things about software engineering, you can clearly find some ways around what the intended use case was.
Well, they call it DevSecOps. I say it should be called SecOps Dev. I think it should be reverse, right? We got to put the security code in first. We got to gear up the functionality. Then we send it out for users. But, it's time to market. It's a business model. They got to get out there and make it fast. And development people are there to make money, and security people are to say, no, you can't do that. I mean, that's the age-old thing. I just read recently something about a new view of open source code in these things, which might explain some of the problems that the manufacturers, let's call them, or the writers of the apps have getting it out to market fast. And I'm hearing people are saying, you know what? Maybe this open source code's not the greatest thing, and we should rethink that too. Are you finding a lot of your, I'm going to call them hacks for lack of a better word, come from open source code nowadays?
Yeah, so the ones that I'm talking about in this talk, I wouldn't say I was actually able to identify any libraries that they're using, but as an open source maintainer myself, I will tell you that I have a lot of confidence in some open source code, but you just need to be careful about what you include in your code. Like if you're going to be including like a small component in your code that you can write yourself and it plays a crucial role in security, you need to spend the time to audit that code before you include it. And if you don't do that, then it may be better just to write it yourself, because the depending on like what companies sponsor the open source project, if at all, because open source sponsorship is a big thing that needs to increase. You don't know who's vetted the code. You don't there's no audit reports or anything. The only thing you have is like a log of CVEs for that project, if there even is one. And yeah, I think open source is going to be here to stay forever. I don't think there's any way that we could possibly continue building on top of computers as we know them without open source, but you definitely need to put a lot of engineering time and effort into auditing what's in your stack.
So talk to me about AI in this field. I've been playing around with about 4 or 5 different AI programs. There's really just one that's really worth anything. I'm not going to say because I want to invest in stock pretty soon. It's the best, right? Can AI help us or hurt us in this way? Can you point AI at the code and say, listen, tell me what's wrong that I'm not seeing? Or is it just going to go look at other open source code and bring that open source code in and use open source code to correct it? I mean, AI could go either way, right? Could flub it or make it better.
Yeah, so I mean, practically speaking, AIs are the sum of their inputs. So obviously it is going to be going out to open source code and doing whatever the model wants it to do, and then combine that into some output. And I am a daily user of ChatGPT 4 and GitHub Copilot. And I will tell you that a lot of the output is not to my satisfaction when it comes to code, even in the context given. I think it excels in writing error statements and log messages, because those have more of like a natural language component to it. As far as like writing code, I think I want models to have like a better memory capacity for the code base that they're entering with, because like if they have the context from the whole project, they can have better suggestions. When they're trying to give generalized suggestions into a specific part of the project, it usually doesn't work well. But I will say that I regularly use ChatGPT 4 to make complex Postgres queries, and it is fantastic.
Now, when you're looking at your I'm going to call it your project, 30,000 feet, and this is what you do for a living, your experience of this, are you seeing, is it easy for you to see where these vulnerabilities are? Is it fairly easy for you at your level to get in there and do that? And let me ask what your level might be. You're not an underworld black hat dark web guy, but you're obviously educated in what you're doing. Does this make us feel a little vulnerable? If it seems easy, and I'm going to say easy not from my point of view, of course, but from your point of view, you seem to get these projects done relatively quickly.
Yeah, so the ones that I'm going to be presenting at this talk are like really tiny projects that I have documented from years ago. But like, if the scope of my experience, if you're curious, is I've been a professional software engineer for almost 6.5 years now. I started off my career in the National Security Agency, and then I moved on to government contracting, and now I'm in the private sector because it pays like 6 times more. And I do a lot of software engineering in my free time as well. As far as like identifying issues in software products that I'm maintaining, it's it's such a boring answer, because the answer is when am I working on it, and when am I working on specifically, because I can identify flaws in like the system pretty easily, but are they security flaws? Like, do I have to dig really deep into it, or are they just like data bugs, or are they actual like code bugs? There's so many different types of bugs that it really gets weird to say like, oh, I identify security issues in the projects I'm working on. And I've had the fortunate, I've been relatively fortunate in my career where I do work on legacy systems where like it's not all my code, but I'm also mostly working on new systems where I'm writing a lot of code. So if there's going to be security issues identified, they're probably not going to be by the person writing it. So we'll just keep it at that.
All right, that's fair enough. I'm intrigued by your government background, and I've interviewed a lot of people in government. So very, very good people in government. But when you tell me you make 6 times more, which I get, are we getting a little brain drain from the government?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Because we need people like you there,
Yeah, so I like the starting salary that I had 6 years ago. I am making more than 6 times more of that right now. 6 times that right now in the private sector, which I guess isn't a super fair comparison because it's it's 6.5 years later. But I entered the National Security Agency through one of their student programs, and that got me a full-time job. And I would definitely recommend to any young people watching, or to any people who have a young person in their life who's wants to get into cybersecurity or just software engineering like me, go to intelligencecareers.gov and look for some of their student programs, because they have fantastic student programs where you can have a full-time job and get paid for it before you even have a degree. You can get housing, you can get a car. There's so much good stuff, but the gist of it is, like, as soon as you get that degree, you have the ability to go to other parts of the sector, and just the government can't keep up with the pay. and especially just how expensive everything is nowadays for young people. I'd recommend that as a foot in the door, and then just ditch the government because they can't keep up.
Micah Parks, senior software engineer, MicahParks.com. Check him out at RVAsec. I got all my acronyms mixed up, Micah. I got to get this right. RVAsec 13, RVAsec 2024. The Marriott Richmond, June 4th, 5th, giving a lecture on reverse engineering for dummies. The what if user sounds fascinating. I won't make it in person this year, but I will next year for sure, and I hope to meet you. Thanks, my friend. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.